We got him. President Trump announcing overnight that U.S. Special Forces have rescued the missing weapons systems officer who was shot down over Iran on Friday in a daring mission behind enemy lines. Let's go live to Trey Yingst in Tel Aviv with more. Trey.
Yeah, Peter, good morning. It was a daring operation that included hundreds of U.S. Special Forces overnight on the ground inside of Iran to rescue that U.S. service member who was in the F-15 that was shot down on Friday. I'm told by a senior U.S. official there was concern in the U.S. government about a possible Iranian plan to try and deceive the Americans. It was the CIA director on Saturday morning that confirmed this was the U.S. service member who was missing behind enemy lines, and a decision was ordered by President Trump to move forward with this operation. The senior official telling Fox News within 8 hours we had planes in motion. Within almost 12 hours, we were on the ground inside of Iran. A very successful military operation that led to this U.S. service member, a crew member on that plane, being rescued from enemy territory. Now, earlier today, Peter, I spoke with President Trump about Operation Epic Fury inside of Iran that continues to hammer the Iranian regime. The president told me he thinks there is a good chance that by tomorrow there could be a deal with the Iranian regime. He adds that they are negotiating now. The president went on to say, if they don't make a deal and fast, I'm considering blowing everything up and taking over the oil. Now, interestingly, the president also talked about the protests in Iran earlier this year. He tells me 45,000 Iranian civilians were killed by their own government. And he tells Fox News, we sent guns to the protesters, a lot of them, and I think the Kurds took the guns. And so a lot of different developments, the president talking about Operation Epic Fury and the success of the U.S. military. But again, Peter, that major headline that the U.S. service member was rescued overnight. You can see this video here of a new Iranian bridge that was destroyed by the United States after President Trump ordered the strikes there. The Iranians were trying to play games at the negotiating table, and the president wanted to send a clear message that the Iranians must negotiate now, not later. And again, the president telling Fox News today that he does believe that a deal is possible tomorrow. And again, he is following a number of developments out of the region as this operation develops. Peter?
Great reporting, Trey, and we'll come back to you if we have anything else. Thank you very much from Tel Aviv. And we are now going to turn to a former F-15 pilot who also served as Assistant Deputy Undersecretary for the Air Force, retired Brigadier General John Teichert. John, you ever seen a rescue mission like this?
Peter, this was incredible. And, you know, fighter pilots have heroes, too, and they are the personnel that do combat search and rescue. And on our worst day, on their worst day this weekend, they came through in spades with a daring mission that got back both the pilot and the weapons systems officer.
And the details are amazing coming out, especially since we know so soon after it happened. The CIA found this colonel in a mountain crevice. Then they told the Pentagon where he was. At some point, this colonel climbed up a 7,000-foot ridgeline. Is that part of the survival training, to try to get as high as you possibly can?
Peter, it's to get as far away from your initial landing site as possible and then start to find a place where you can hide well and start to communicate via encrypted radio back to the rescue forces. And so it takes the great training of that WISO, but also the great training of those on-call combat search and rescue personnel in order to accomplish what we saw with the help of national means like the CIA as well.
CIA SEAL Team 6 got the call here to actually go into Iran. Once they rescued the Airman, it seems like there was some kind of a temporary Iranian base that was built quickly in the desert. When they were trying to leave, the plane got stuck in the sand, and they had to blow it up. The U.S. military doesn't blow up their own planes unless they really, really have to. Why'd they have to in this scenario?
Peter, some of the most exquisite material or equipment we use is reserved for these types of situations. And so no doubt the type of aircraft that those operators used was so sensitive, not just in the physical shape, but likely on everything that was on it, that there was no way that we would want that to fall into the hands of the Iranians or anyone else.
How long will the Pentagon wait to start debriefing this colonel? Because he obviously we believe that he's in Kuwait now getting medical attention that he needs. But he's also got a one-of-a-kind look behind enemy lines in Iran. How long will they wait before they start picking his brain about what he saw?
Peter, it probably depends on his medical condition. I think they already, with the pilot they picked up on Friday, have started an extensive debrief. But I think you want to make sure those crew members are okay first, and then you can start to use the types of information that they have uniquely as you start to dig that out of them.
We've got a very rare look in wartime, peacetime, at how the CIA helped trick the Iranians here. They started a deception campaign to spread the word inside Iran that U.S. forces already had this missing pilot, even though they didn't. Have you ever seen that before?
Peter, I have seen deception used extensively in warfare, but we haven't had a lot of combat search and rescue opportunities in the last several of decades. But I think it's amazing that when you think about this operation, the #1 priority of U.S. Central Command, but they also had assets from a slew of national sources, including the CIA. And I love the idea that they hatched a plan to divert some of the manpower that could have been searching for him in the specific location where he was somewhere else so that the rescue would be safer and more effective.
When an F-15, you have flown this aircraft before. When you were being trained about the, they call it the SEER, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape Plan. Do they tell you we might have to launch a big deception campaign to come and get you? Or is it just, what kind of things go into that training?
Peter, that is 3 weeks of grueling training. You never hope in real life to get to the resistance and escape. That means you've been captured. But the survival and the evasion is all about, I have landed now behind enemy lines. I'm by myself and I could be there for an extended period of time. What do I do in order to take care of myself, but also to create the conditions so I foster the safety and the effectiveness of the rescue crews? And no doubt that Wizzo fell back on that training and all of it was executed brilliantly.
This weapons systems officer was wounded, but he could still walk, according to President Trump. And he hid out in the mountains for more than a day. Based on the training and the terrain and the enemy, how much longer do you think he could have made it?
When he landed under parachute, he would have immediately taken assessment of how he's doing. He would have gathered some equipment and then he would have gotten away from that location. And he would be ready to hide out there for days, if not weeks, depending on the type of environment he was in. And then only when the conditions were sufficient, such that the rescue forces could go in with a high probability of success, would they then eventually go in? They probably had been talking to him from the very beginning, but they wanted to make sure that the conditions were right, the disposition of the enemy was right, before they went in and successfully rescued him.
They are saying that this is one of the most complex military operations ever. And we hope to learn some more about it. Thank you very much.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Kane podcast for full episodes right now.